right, we had a little technical difficulty there. Starting the broadcast. Wait for everybody to get back on here real quick. Tom, you hear me?
Yeah, yep.
All right, cool.
So not gonna. Oh, there it is. All right.
All right. So we are live. I gotta make sure we got the right link going out here to people now. I think we got
YouTube link. YouTube link stayed the same, so you're good.
It's the same.
Yeah, YouTube link stayed the same. You're live. You're on there.
All right, dope. Yeah. Duncan made it just in time.
Fucking A.
We're live on air.
Oh.
I guess I should get this thing started. Is Cynthia and Benton seeing the new link? Well,
I sent them an IPFS hash, so it might take.
Oh, so it could be 10 minutes.
Yeah.
They might have to sort of switch to a different local host setup. And,
ladies and gentlemen, we have the AOTB Battle Royale featuring Joe, Public Enemy #1 Looney, Bang Bang Benton Bainbridge, Pretty Boy Tommy Nicholas, and Damaging Duncan Crostew. All right.
we're gonna have to mute one of those.
Yeah. We're gonna have air horn battles here. So, all right. Welcome to the Royal Rumble, the Battle Royale, the IPFS showdown. This all started in kind of the art project Decentralized Chet. We cherry picked some IPFS pro people, con people, but basically people that know something about it. So I think a lot of people have been hearing about IPFS for a while in this space and maybe might not know what it is. I know I do not have a grasp of it. Cynthia, what's your take on IPFS?
Well, I'm trying to see what the new thing is, because it seems peer-to-peer is not particularly anything new. And so I'm trying to see what's new about it, because I've been reading this document.
I just want to take a picture of you doing your podcast.
Everybody's family is getting involved.
You gotta do the Hulk pose.
What is the Hulk pose?
You gotta.
Anyway, Cynthia, you've been reading the document.
I've been reading this document,
All right.
and I actually ended up with more questions than I thought I would. But
Did you download that from IPFS?
Yes.
Yeah, they sent it to your house.
Oh.
By insurance.
Wow.
Second day air.
Wow.
IPFS.
Where's that bell? That bell's supposed to be ringing by now. I mean, it again, I'm just trying to see what's new, because I'm confused about. I thought that little packets of data were being spread across several nodes, and it seems like that's not the case. It seems like it could be one file with the entirety of content and going to several nodes. So I need some explanation about that.
So can I offer to try to be the first person to take a stab at what is IPFS?
Yeah, what is IPFS?
And as I noted earlier, I made slides. So I will share my slides if that's cool with you guys really quick.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Let me share my screen here. Forget how I do that. Wait, can I not share my screen if Benton's sharing his screen? How's that work?
You should be
There it
able
is.
to.
No.
not
That's
sharing
all right.
it.
Yeah.
Just literally just a design. That's just a design thing. All right. Cool. Can you guys see what I'm looking at?
Yeah.
IPFS-Y.
Yep.
All right, cool. So, I mean, I just thought it would be good to kick off the battle. And I'm with just a quick, what is IPFS? And for transparency, I'm going to be on the relatively pro IPFS and maybe even very pro IPFS side of the battle. So I wanted to do a quick, like, what the hell is it? And I'm going to try to not address the potential, like, there's Joe and various other people. You're going to poke a lot of holes in this. I'm going to try to not address the potential holes. I'm just going to try to address what it is. And I think the best way to start is, like, IPFS is basically an enhanced, souped up, slightly decentralized replacement for HTTP. And that's a little technical. So just, I think an example that'll help people is, like, let's say you want to load an image from the internet. Y'all probably know, like, the image tag on the internet. It's like img href equals, and then the link to the image. So what happens when that image tag is trying to load that image? Well, with HTTP, it basically says what basically that file name actually means is go to, like, hey, load this image, go to this specific IP address, right? Then the file has a name, right? Go find a file with this name and then load me whatever's in that file. Now, I might think it's a picture of art. That's what I expect it to be. But if the person, who controls the server serving that PNG goes and changes the name of the file owenda.png and just makes it a dick pic, then it'll come with a dick pic. If they change it to art, it'll come back with art. Y'all know what I mean? Because, like, files on our computers, like computers or servers, we can change their names. We can change different content to be different file names, and it becomes different content, essentially.
Sure.
With IPFS, you just say, give me this hash. Like, just give me this. You say specifically a piece of content, like an image, has a hash, and you don't say where to look for that. You don't say what it is, what it's called. You just say, hey, give me this hash, and you either get that content or you don't get that content. And you actually don't know. The downside of this, in a way, is you actually don't know if you're going to get the content or not before you ask for it. But you just say, give it to me. Give it to me as close as you possibly can give it to me, and give it to me as fast as you possibly give it to me. This has some quick pros. The first is that it's content addressed. It just means, like, the content is the address. It's optimized in some ways, because if the file is being served a bunch of different places, it'll give it to you from the closest to you physically. And then if that person can't deliver it to you, it'll just go to the next closest to you physically. And that makes it hard to DDoS. It makes it easier to cache. And there's a whole rich tooling ecosystem around this whole thing. So it's actually very, very easy for developers to build on IPFS. And really quickly, what it is not is permanent file storage. There is no storage concept involved with IPFS. The IPFS does not store files. IPFS is not even a thing that could store files. So there is nothing involved with file storage on here. Individuals at their own goodwill or for business purposes or whatever store the files. So it is not file storage. It is not decentralized file storage. What it is decentralized slightly decentralized file delivery, and a universal, totally decentralized content hash that can't be changed and can't be faked. It is tied directly to the content. And I promise I'm going to finish this up really quickly, but, like, IPFS for rare digital art, why are people even interested in that? And basically what people do with IPFS for rare digital art, like crypto collectibles and stuff like that. And just to be clear, I think CryptoKitties doesn't do this, but just because I think CryptoKitties is what people will be familiar with. The idea is, like, for crypto collectible, you could put the image of, like, the cat on IPFS as an IPFS hash, put that IPFS hash on the blockchain as a key to the asset. So basically the blockchain asset that people buy that ends up being the CryptoKitty is a token that has a piece of metadata that references the hash of the IPFS file. And then if anybody in the world is still serving that IPFS file, it can be, you can see like, okay, I bought this token. What IPFS file does it actually represent? What image does it actually represent? And it's not relying on like if you put a link on the blockchain, as soon as that server went down, as soon as like rareart.io, for example, it stops being a URL, you just would have no idea like what that reference to that actually was. So that's why people are interested in it. And it solves ideally, it can solve a couple of problems. And that's just basically, it can help the buyer understand what they're buying. So by putting a reference to the actual underlying art file on the blockchain, the art buyer can understand what the artist believed this token to be. So basically, if they say the token that you're buying represents this piece of art represented by this hash, you can confidently go back and say, okay, let me check IPFS for this hash. Okay, it looks like somebody's serving it. Oh, and it is indeed this file. And the artist can never change that. Like that hash represents that exact file. It can never represent a different file. So nobody can go behind your back and represent a different file via that hash. And then the last thing is it helps to solve the problem of who the art relies on. So on rareart.io, for example, the Rare Digital Art project that I'm involved with, we serve up a bunch of Rare Digital Art, and the tokens have references to a lot of things via IPFS. If rareart.io goes away, but or if rareart.io, the domain name or whatever, just goes away and we stop serving those files, as long as somebody else is still serving them, for example, the token owner, so like Benton could be serving these, for example, just to make sure the tokens he owns still contain their values, you'd still be able to see the examples. And I'll just pop open some quick links really quickly just to show you what I mean, and then I'll be done and let people poke holes in my story. So just like quickly, for example, I'm sure this will make Joe happy. I'm going to have to log into MetaMask so I don't get this annoying error. All right, so I'll do that. So here's a piece of Rare Digital Art that I actually own a copy of, but just if I didn't, it's a beautiful photograph by a guy named Jack McCain. It's called Oyinda. And it's one of my favorite photographs on rareart.io. But actually the token that is representing this piece of art actually has two things associated with it. The first is it has a JSON file. So this JSON file you can see is being served by ipfs.rareart.io. This is IPFS node on rareart.io. And it is actually it's just a series of metadata. So it's basically like, instead of putting the description of the file directly on the blockchain, which would be expensive, we put it in this hash, and then you can reference it on IPFS, shot in LA, California. There's a bunch of other stuff here. But one of the really important things is the actual underlying asset file is also part of this metadata and is also on IPFS. So I can copy that and look at that on IPFS, and you'll see it. And this might not seem particularly interesting or special to you, but what's really interesting, to me at least, is I can actually, so you see this URL as ipfs.rareart.io. That's the RareArt Labs IPFS node. Now I can actually take this rareart.io out of the URL and just go to the ipfs.io, which is IPFS, the protocol labs who created IPFS. This is actually their IPFS node. And I am 100% confident if I hit enter on this, that I will get the same file. And this is not that exciting. You're going to see it's going to load a little slower because they're further away, but it loaded the same file. So now ipfs.io/IPFS serves me exactly the same file given the same inputs. And many, there are probably hundreds of IPFS nodes actually that are swarming this right now, because IPFS has a small incentive structure for swarming other people's files. And by default, people swarm, meaning serve and store lots of other people's files all at the same time. So there's actually probably copies of this picture all over the internet that I don't even know about. And if RareArt Labs stopped serving this file, it would still be available, at least for some period of time. And then if any collector of this piece were to re-put that back on their own IPFS node, it would be back available for absolutely everybody in the world. And this allows for more confident decentralized dApp building, because this information is all actually on the blockchain. So somebody could, for example, build a dApp that looks for the actual asset hash of this image of the blockchain image of the blockchain asset, pulls out the IPFS URLs, pulls out the metadata, and shows the image, all without having to rely on any central server. Of course, having to rely, and this is the important point, on somebody somewhere, maybe out of the goodness of their heart, maybe out of the fact that they own the asset, serving this image out to people. And that's really all that IPFS actually is.
All right. Thank you very much. I saw Duncan over there shaking his head a little bit, pacing back and forth. Does he
He's
want to?
upset with me.
Duncan, do you want to chime in on something? You're on mute.
Turn off your mute, Duncan.
Mute.
I'm turn off. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm making
There you
coffee and doing shit. I just got here, so it's and like I don't know. I'm not in a. There's a lot of things that you said that I agree with, and there's some things that I think are finer points. But I kind of want to hear from everybody. I'm still kind of digesting my notes from earlier. I have some URLs to drop in the chat. One of the presentations was for something for IPFS that was just released like today, and they had put it together in the last week. I mean, as far as finalizing it. But I want to hear the other end of the conversation too, because
can you tell the audience where you were, what you're talking about? Where were you?
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. I went to the decentralized web conference. I'm in San Francisco right now, and a session of lightning talks. So everybody had like 3 or 5 minutes, probably closer to 5, and the whole time slot was for IPFS, and several people got up and explained what their function is in the cog. I got a crap ton of stickers, and they're all hexagons. The hexagon for the IPFS, and then all these additional logos for these additional services. And in my opinion, IPFS offers a core service for other services to be built on. And I think that hosting the files is outside of their scope as far as being the new slender waste or slim waste in the internet, replacing IP and domains, which are both mutable and both dictate your pathway to the content. But if there was a namespace that was undeniably linked to in equal function as a seed for a torrent, you download the seed, the torrent file, you don't have the whole data, but you have instructions on how to get the data and what is the authentic data. Somebody can't just put a fake file and seed the torrent successfully. They can't do that with I don't know.
Yeah, they can't do that with either. No, that's true. I mean, and remember, IPFS is a BitTorrent implementation. So that's one thing that people get kind of tripped up on, is like, why is it different than BitTorrent? It's just a BitTorrent implementation with some very specific functionality specific to trying to replace HTTP, namely the sort of DAG structure of content delivery to give you the file that you're looking for, the universal namespace tied to the file as opposed to just a hash representing the torrent. And it's just one BitTorrent seed, basically, as opposed to there being many. That's really all it is. And honestly, it's really not that much more than a BitTorrent implementation with a Git repository and a DAG.
So Joe says he has an argument, I think, with that, with HTTP versus IPFS.
Yeah, I made a slide while Tommy was giving his slides. I don't know if you guys can see it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's digest that for a second, and then I'll take it.
Yeah, no, I've learned a lot from this.
All right. So I like what Tommy said, that it's basically just BitTorrent with a kind of Git structure inside. What's the benefit of having that Git structure as opposed to just having seeding the file itself?
Basically, the only like, and this is where the rare digital art for IPFS and like IPFS period debate is a little weird, because for rare digital art, I think you and I have even talked about this. Not a lot of benefit, honestly. Like a web torrent hash would work fine, although I guess people would have to be running a web torrent client. But for like the big picture vision, it's content delivery. It just allows you to be their kind of vision is to have like a CDN everywhere. You know, everybody is a CDN, and so you would be able to get to the quickest version of the file without having to tell IPFS how to get to the quickest version of the file. That's really the only benefit I understand of the Git repository type DAG structure inside the BitTorrent implementation.
Yeah, so I did some research today. Really, the major benefit of using IPFS over something like BitTorrent is that you can grab a piece of the whole as opposed to the entire file that's being seeded. So it's actually pretty good for large data structures, because like Git, it kind of has a tree of hashes. And you can grab a piece rather than having to download the whole thing and looking at that one piece. So
Cool.
I'll relent that that's an advantage for IPFS, but I think we can all agree that that's really not the application we're talking about right now.
My argument actually that for the application in rare digital art, like literally there's only one argument for using it in rare digital art is the dev tools are really easy to use and everybody's already using it. So
that's kind of like the same argument for Ethereum, right? The dev tools are easy and everybody's using it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the right choice, right?
That is my argument for using Ethereum as well, yes.
Yep. Well, it makes sense then. It's a match made in heaven, right?
Of course. It's like if everyone jumped over a cliff into a blockchain, would you jump to? And the answer for me is like, hell yeah. What
We
when
go head first to this motherfucker.
Yeah, exactly.
Cliff Clavin.
Yeah, so I guess my whole argument with IPFS is it's overhyped, and it's not really any more useful than things that have existed previous to it, especially for this application. The big data application, maybe it is more useful. I'm skeptical as to why just posting
big data like a movie or something, like a Hollywood.
No. Something like a large like database table or JSON file where you just want a piece. You don't want the whole thing.
All the rare Pepes that have ever existed all at once.
Yeah, so that's a good example actually. So if I had an IPFS thing and I was serving every single rare Pepe and you only wanted to look at one, if it was a torrent, you'd have to download all of them to look at the one. But with IPFS, you can just, as I understand it, you can just look at the one and you only have to download the one.
So
From my experience using torrents and trackers, you can select which files you want to download and seed, and you can neglect the other ones.
But he's saying
I thought you were inferring that you could fetch a
I'm saying
portion
if
of
you're
the file.
seeding, I'm saying if you're seeding,
Depends how you publish the torrent.
He's saying like even if you
absolutely.
seeded every rare Pepe as one file, you could still like there's ways in which you could just get a part of that, right? Like because you can just get a part of the
Yeah, and that's
even
really,
if it was all one file.
Yeah, so that's really the advantage to IPFS. But I mean, as it stands for this rare art application, I don't think it's necessarily bad, but I don't think it's really necessary at all. I think there's a big difference between data immutability and data persistence, and I think a lot of people think that the thing that IPFS offers is immutability when you're publishing the hash on chain anyway. So your immutability is there. You're looking for data persistence. You're saying, I want to make sure this file is available if I want to look at it. Because IPFS isn't adding immutability to that in this application because you already have that. Kind of my argument is it doesn't matter. No one's losing these images. It's not a problem. And I think the big kind of misnomer that I think Tommy kind of explained pretty well is that people think IPFS is set it and forget it. Like I'll put the file on IPFS and now it's there. It's only there if someone cares to host the file. Just like it's only exists in HTTP if the server that it's on cares to host the file. So
Well, we're dealing with the tree in the woods, though, Joe.
yeah, I mean, it's a problem that doesn't exist. We're solving a problem that's not a problem. And I'm
For what it's worth, I
very
100% agree with that.
I'm very skeptical.
But the namespace, it's a namespace, and the namespace is permanent for all time to the point where humanity goes into space. It still is the same name for that file. When domains can expire and domains can get seized, and so ultimately, if you want to equate something with another thing, it has to be permanent. Now, I agree with the fact that it's not set it and forget it. You don't just put it on IPFS and then there it is, all the work's done for you. But I could compare it to using Counterparty and just making a token. You make a token and you don't advertise it, you don't support it. That doesn't mean shit. It doesn't mean it does anything. There's no value. You have to have social capital. You have to have a community who believes in rare Pepe for that one token to be worth anything in the code. I think that there are some sociological hurdles, and the biggest one is misunderstanding. People don't know what to expect because it's a tipping point, because it's the top of the iceberg, because it's the flag on the top of the iceberg, and there's all this stuff that we don't even know about that is on the precipice of becoming a reality. And this is a new paradigm as far as permanent namespace. And one of the things that I thought was interesting when the archive.org people presented their usage of IPFS is they said out of the 40 petabytes or whatever they got that they're trying to serve through IPFS, they actually have to use the HTTP sometimes to fetch the information, but they have it scripted in a way that once it's fetched by the computer, it sets that link because there's so many billions of files that they have. They're kind of doing the process on demand. And so it is a balance. It's not going to be overnight, and the transition is going to be gradual. But the cool things are that at the end of Roadmap, they've got IPFS native to most web browsers, and the people involved are working directly with the major web browsers. Specifically, Brave is showing promise of integration. And so I think a lot of the qualms that we have could be resolved from addressing the disinformation, whether it's just a misunderstanding because it's so new and there's no adequate metaphor, just clearing the room. And it's a good solid pillar to build things off of, and I think it's just a matter of figuring out where you want to compartmentalize. Now, I fully agree with you, Joe, and I'm about to done talking, but I fully agree with you that there needs to be a sociological aspect for the community supporting the file to be archived. There has to be an interest. The picture we saw earlier in the presentation, if that doesn't resound with me, I'm not going to host it. If I'm not a stake owner, I'm probably not going to use my resources to contribute it. And if it was questionable content that I didn't believe in, that was a moral choice, then I would have serious problems as a corporation implementing this kind of technology, knowing that I might be helping people misuse it for bad purposes. And so there's this balance where there has to be an accountability in order for the adaptation. And it is similar to the curators of different art collections in rare art.
Let's get Benton's opinion on something. We haven't heard from him yet.
Yeah, because you want to keep stuff forever. Yeah, Benton wants to keep things and as a part of the culture.
Yeah,
wants
absolutely.
to have. Yeah. So how does this working as this jibe with what you expect or what you anticipate?
Well, first of all, I mostly agree with everybody's statements. You know, for me, the whole challenge of this broader decentralized art space is mostly a sociological problem. The problem is the technology is being built, and you know, there's a lot to work out there, but it's an education problem and it's a sociological problem. My concern is really that communities need a way to preserve their cultures. And, you know, that's one thing I disagree with you on, Joe, that I feel that culture is always under attack and always being threatened, because I guarantee you there's somebody out there who doesn't like what you know, what you like. I mean, that's just the nature of the world. And even abstract art, you know, here's something abstract, should be completely innocuous, but that was Entartekunst, you know, that was what Hitler banned. He was like, oh yeah, let's get rid of all that abstract stuff. That's degenerate. So I believe personally that there's a greater challenge, which is the preservation of cultures. And I like the fact that what IPFS offers is for people to make a community together and agree to pin each other's files. Over on the other computer, can you guys see that? Like, I just called up a page with the GitHub for IPFS Pinning Consortium. So that's a way that people can.
We're not seeing it on screen.
Oh yeah, if you go to the no, it's up there. If you go to the other Benton.
The other Benton.
If you click on the other Benton.
Do you guys see it? I see it on mine.
Yeah.
No, we see it.
Okay, well, whatever. I'll put the just search on IPFS Pinning Consortium GitHub, and anybody out there, I'll also type it into the chat window. So basically, the idea of this is, I mean, I agree that's a real major problem. People have this mistaken idea, like, oh, I can make an IPFS node. I can put a file up there, it's hashed, it's forever. No, as soon as you stop pinning that if you don't pin it, and if you take your node off of IPFS, it's gone. However, you bring your computer back online, you reactivate your node, and that same file will be content addressable with the exact same hash, right?
And Benton, that is the critical, not to interrupt you, that is the critical thing where I say short term, I'm with Joe, this is not a problem, but long term, I truly believe that there will be applications that, for example, scan so rareart.io, like we know what all the images are for all the tokens because we built this shit, right? Like we don't need to look at the blockchain to know what piece of art is associated with a thing. We're the ones who put it up there. But I believe for us and other art applications, there will be applications that just literally say, post a token address here, and we will try to find, because there's now a metadata standard, which me and Matt Condon wrote, so people could use the same metadata standard we use. So you could just look at the blockchain and be like, oh, there's the metadata hash, there's the text, there's the image, load all of those via IPFS. And then imagine, for example, you do that for a token you own, and then image not available. Nobody's pinning that. But you downloaded it earlier, anticipating this problem when you bought it, because you bought it for a bunch of money and you were like, maybe nobody will be pinning this at some point. You fire up terminal, run an IPFS node, swarm that same hash just right off your laptop, and then boom, it's right back online. You know, that's a little bit of a weird situation. You'd probably want to run that on a real server at some point. Maybe somebody builds a service for that. But like, that's really different than if rareart.io just went away, our image URLs went away, our images went away. You still have availability for that image, but like, what are you going to do with it? Like, nobody's building applications that are going to, there'd be no way to kind of like get it back online anyway. And just the fact that everybody is building around this standard, even though it really is just a BitTorrent implementation. Great, now we have a BitTorrent implementation people are actually using. I think that's great. That's good enough for me for a lot of
and not just uses BitTorrent.
Yeah,
people stop using BitTorrent.
No, they do, but they're not using it in web applications very much. I mean, I think maybe you correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not seeing a lot of BitTorrent sort of like implementations at the web level and web applications. That's just
I think because it's not a problem that needs to be solved, right?
Hey, so one of the comments.
They're not trying to sell a token.
Wait, one of the comments is from.
Yeah, you are. We're all trying to
Let's
sell
go back.
tokens.
Let's go back
Hold
to the
on.
bit.
Wait. We're all trying to sell tokens.
Because I need to disagree with that right there. ZeroNet has been used for several years already, and that's a great use case for BitTorrent meets Bitcoin as a website, where each individual who browses the website becomes a peer. I think if you're not familiar with ZeroNet, you should go to their website .io and check it out, because it is an amalgamation of that and Namecoin.
Yeah, that's cool. I will check that out.
Dan Anderson asks, "Can I store medical records with IPFS? What's
No.
like its wheelhouse?"
IPFS is not a storage mechanism, so the answer is no.
You can hash them and get a
So-
content address.
So let me
There you go.
get
Can I do? Go ahead.
Tommy, I think one of the things you mentioned was pretty telling, right? So you said that. Hold on a second. I can't hear you.
Can you hear us?
Oh, I can hear you now.
Okay.
There we go. Yeah. So one of the things you said is, so I can't find the file, the picture of my token, but I own it, so I downloaded the file too, right? So who else cares about the image except for the person that owns it?
And we've talked, definitely, it's the people that own it. Maybe an archive.org, maybe like some other kind of like arbitrary out in the ether players, but it's mostly the people who own it and the artist, and then maybe like ecosystem players. So like if you imagine that there's a lot of websites out there that try to make it so that you can display a full rare digital art collection across lots of different, rareart.io and rarepepe and whatever. I hope that rareart.io ends up being that, but let's say that we're just kind of one, and then there's lots of different implementations and there's wallet providers. You can imagine that some of those wallet providers may, as a service, swarm all the files if they are able to understand what all the files are, and if a lot of them are on IPFS. But those are the only people I can think of, and it's probably just the artist and the people who own the token. To be frank, that's quite
Yeah.
likely.
So I think the example you gave where, I have the picture, and now I'm going to spin up some random application to run IPFS in my terminal and give it to everybody. I think that's a little unrealistic for the regular person. Not to say IPFS couldn't get there, but there are technologies that are already there. WebTorrent, for example, uses WebRTC, and I can stream or seed my file just in my browser by going to a website. And in that case, the magnet link is a hash, very similar to an IPFS hash. So I would say that for the application that you guys are using, if you really think it matters and you really think these images are going to be lost for all time, so you need to really plan on a decentralized data persistence, you should probably look at WebTorrent, because you could actually set up a system where anybody that's on the website looking at the file is seeding it.
Yeah.
And you could also set up in a way that the owners of the token can choose whether or not they want to seed it and become seeds in the swarm. And that's way more realistic as a means to distribute the file to the people that actually care about it. And it's also just as immutable, as in pointing to a hash of the file, as IPFS would be. So I think IPFS has applications, maybe a decentralized HTTP, if that's what you want, although we have things like that, like ZeroNet that Duncan talked about, and nobody uses it because it doesn't matter and it's not fast. And I want my thing fast. So I go to a website that paid a lot to have fast servers and can serve me the data as fast as I want to see it.
Well, IPFS is fast, though. To be like, IPFS can be faster just because of content cat. Like, I agree on the WebTorrent thing. Like, that's a super clever thing that I had not thought about before you told me about it. So I like that. I like that idea a lot, and I think it'll be a huge mistake if somebody in the IPFS ecosystem doesn't make an exact copy of that, because that is definitely how that should work. But IPFS could definitely be faster, and I mean, like Cloudflare, sort of like local caching has made web file delivery faster by just caching pieces of content around the internet. And Cynthia asked me a question what I meant by this caching thing. The reason that by default it's easier to cache IPFS files is because of all the functionality and the namespacing. The challenge with caching is, like, if you're building a server that wants to check before it goes all the way, or sorry, if you're building like web infrastructure, that before it goes to a server to see if the file's there, it says, wait, do we already have a version of this file closer, or like right here maybe? We don't have to go all the way back here, but we have one right here. It's hard to do that because you have to check the entire contents of the file and then see if you already have that. It's kind of hard to do.
So do you think that's,
Well, part of my issue with this is it's sounding more and more like Napster. and I'm trying to see, again, looking at this, and I'm trying to not put my lawyer hat on, but trying to think if things are on someone's, because I was reading the material and it looks like these things could be either ephemerally on somebody's computer, maybe temporarily, maybe not, but it indicates that everybody that wants to participate in this in terms of a node could have it on their computer, as well as the caching. And so those are kind of the Napster problems with regard to having a copy of something without permission. So, and again, if somebody's making it available, and it sounds like what you guys are describing is the people who are putting their art or their tokens or their art related to the tokens on the system are basically relinquishing that. They are not interested in preventing copies.
Right. Yes, that is 100% true. Yes,
okay.
There will be copying by default. Yeah.
Okay.
I want to talk about how you just gleaned over Napster like that, because Napster and the spin-off SoulSeek were enabled artists to communicate and share files and come to market together in similar genres because of the file trading. And yes, one very shallow way to use file trading is illegal, but some people choose to do the moral thing, even if the system allows them to not. And it acted as a vehicle for people to publish music and for people to find new music that they wouldn't otherwise. And so I think that this complex problem shouldn't be compartmentalized. And the thing is, yes, Napster, before Napster was corporate, was shortly after people were using FTP. And then after Napster, there was LimeWire. Sometime in between, there was a website called Audio Galaxy, which was very inspirational even to this day. And this was way before blockchains, way before botnets.
I don't have.
The kind of functionality between the two. And so logical progression, and that is 20 years behind us in the timeline.
Well, and again, I mean, I argued for the technology for Napster, so I personally have no problem with peer-to-peer. I just want people who are using it to understand, and that's why I wanted to clarify, if the people who are using it and are making the art available in this fashion, that they understand that this is what they are agreeing to. You see what I'm saying? Because that's different. Napster, the musicians or the music, they didn't give permission for that, right? It was a completely different thing. If somebody's given permission and they are allowing it, I have no problem with that.
But
So let me ask a question. Hold on a second. I lost my train of thought.
Get it back. That shit.
Oh, it was a good question.
Back in the station.
Okay, here's my question. Tommy, when you decided to use IPFS, what alternatives did you consider for decentralized storage?
I looked at a BitTorrent implementation directly, and then basically when I learned that IPFS was a BitTorrent implementation, I said, fuck it. Yeah, it's great. Because for me, like and this is I think the point that I would emphasize the most is that like ecosystems really do matter, and IPFS has a relatively robust ecosystem because maybe not even because of any of the root features, but because of the vision they've put forth around content delivery and content address namespacing, content addressable namespacing. They've built up a big ecosystem, and it is like really easy to do the things that you want to do as a software developer with IPFS. You get all the benefits of BitTorrent. You don't get all the benefits of WebTorrent, for example. But again, WebTorrent is just an implementation of BitTorrent that somebody should probably duplicate on the IPFS ecosystem. And so from what I was seeing, it was like two things. Like one, it was really easy to do. It basically was BitTorrent. And second of all, the ecosystem around like take a hash and then deliver content and assume it's an IPFS hash was developing pretty rapidly. And so for things like developing the ERC standard that I helped develop around the sort of using a hash to represent metadata and then file assets and stuff like that, which was a simple thing to do, but I hope people adopt it. It just seemed like getting people from 0 to 1 on that with IPFS would be like way easier than not. And kind of when I went from like, oh, we should do something with like BitTorrent. Oh, there's this IPFS thing. Oh, it seems specifically built for, this purpose in some ways, not for digital art, but, delivering from a web server content that is represented by a hash. It might be on an unknown number of servers. I was just like, yeah, this is great. What's been interesting is though to see, and you probably asked this question because you had some context to it, so I'll let you fill that in. But what was interesting to see was that everybody in the Rare Digital Art, like when we published the rareart.io white paper in August of 2017, I had never seen a reference to IPFS in relation to Rare Digital Art before. I had never seen one. And I'm not saying that we came up with this. We almost certainly did not. But I had never seen one, and I thought we were super smart. I thought we were being real clever. And every Rare Digital Art project that's not on Counterparty going forward has been like, we are the shits on IPFS, and that's how you know it's permanent, and like blah, blah, blah. And John and I, when we were writing the white paper, we argued. The reason I know some of these arguments that you're kind of, not just because we've had them, but John and I argued extensively about this topic. Like, was it going to add any value to put it on IPFS? What could we imagine people doing or not doing that where they would get value out of this IPFS stuff? And we imagined some scenarios that we continue to imagine today, some of which are real, some of which probably are fake in reality. And it's just been interesting. And that's why I take the pro IPFS stance. But at the same time, like, your skepticism is probably more appropriate than my optimism, just in the sense that people have dove head first into like IPFS is the solution for this. It's on IPFS. Don't worry about it. And I think that marketing is going to be a problem, because I think there's going to be a lot of broken links out there in the Rare Digital Art world when these projects roll off. We just saw a prominent project roll off. I mean, I don't know how much we want to talk about this, but there's a project. Well, there's a Scribe, but Archetype doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
It's this different thing, and
they never existed.
it never. Yeah, so it's sort of like there's going to be a lot of broken links out there, and a lot of artists that are like, "What happened to my shit?"
Rare project.
Right.
I always think about how, and I mentioned this in the chat the other day, is how a lot of music got lost in that like transition into blogs and streams and stuff from like 06 to like 011, 012 or so, like Hulk share, Z shares, mega uploads, and all that. So that can't happen, especially if you have paid thousands of dollars for some token, and then it just
but see, that's why it's not a problem, because if you pay thousands of dollars for the token, you're going to probably save the image to your computer.
Mm-hmm. Sure, but Cynthia and I had the conversation when we were testing yesterday, and I'm just going to keep advocating for this, the idea of like why there is a problem to be solved, because a lot of things we don't necessarily see the value now, right? And then years in the future, it might be years down the line before anybody else sees the value. So just as an example, let's say there's some art that every single existing Rare digital art just rejects. They're like, your art sucks. Like these, the salon de refuse of the rare digital art world, they could come together, make their own persistence consortium and using IPFS or some other system. I'm really agnostic. They can preserve this culture for a future day when people are ready to see it. Modigliani, right? He died, broke, drunk, homeless, and his painting set at the time the record, I don't think it's the record anymore, of the highest price paid for a painting ever, $157 million at auction, right? He was not appreciated in his lifetime. People couldn't, but it was preserved, luckily, and it went on. So you can have a group of people who get together, literally just saying, hey, all of us people who are rejected by everybody else, let's get together and preserve each other's artwork. So
And
whether it's
the Catalans did that, right?
How did Spain ban
Yeah.
IPFS?
Yeah, the Catalans. I was just thinking that the Catalans.
Exactly. Yes. Well, how did they do it? They you can't really ban
They
it.
couldn't.
Just exactly in the same way. That's the reason another reason I like it. You can't really ban the Ethereum protocol. You can't ban a blockchain, right? So on that level, yeah, in Catalan, as you may know, there's been an ongoing battle to get independence from Spain, and it's really come to a heated battle over the past couple of years, including, well, whatever, let's not go there. But basically, like, yes, they were using IPFS as a way to spread information that otherwise would be taken down if it was had a single point of failure where they could take it down.
It's the same reason it's hard to DDoS IPFS is the same reason that worked, which is that they could try to block individual IPs from serving IPFS links. They could try to block specific implementations of IPFS, but they couldn't block the ultimate delivery of IPFS files where we're running local nodes
Right.
and just looking for stuff being swarmed. Yeah, that's a good point. And I think Joe's point, that could have been accomplished with BitTorrent directly using WebTorrent or any other fucking implementation. And I think that's totally true. But the tooling around this to solve this specific problem, I think, is super interesting. And I am glad that at least the word is being spread about it by somebody, even if it wasn't necessary.
But to that point, sorry, just very quickly, Joe. But to that point, because unlike BitTorrent, you have the unique content address, right? Then it also helps to prevent if someone was deliberately inserting disinformation in there, right? Like, you can double check the hash, right? And pass that hash on a piece of paper or whatever. And so there are reasons for the specific content address.
Well, that's how BitTorrent works, though.
No, okay, but basically my point being that, like,
BitTorrent's not content addressable, though. It's not content addressable. It's just a torrent hash, and it's not directly tied to torrent because they don't keep the like Git implementations like that actually references what the content was.
Exactly.
Well, it's the hash of the data that the torrent is referencing.
Yeah, you can back check. You can back check that you're looking at the same data. You can do that, that's the only way it would download. But the same data doesn't create the same hash every time. That is not true on just a regular BitTorrent implementation.
That's just because your metadata is different.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay,
So
that's the problem, is what I'm saying. I like the content address. Sorry, go ahead.
Is this a financing problem? Because again, I use Internet Archive all the time. I find things there that, from long time ago that I haven't seen in decades. And I give money, and it goes to the entirety of the project. So as part of the issue here, finance or making sure that there is use of content to keep it alive. Is there a way that if it's something that people are truly interested in, are they truly only interested in keeping that particular piece of data that survive, or the entirety of the system?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like imagine instead of donating to archive.org, you just swarm your favorite pieces of content, and then then archive.org.
Can you describe Swarm a little bit? What that is exactly? I knew Swarm as a token at one point. That
It's like seeding on BitTorrent. So it's basically just like you have a copy of the files and you're willing to give it to other people if they request it. That's what they call swarming. And we should probably just call it seeding because it's more what people know, but it's that. So just imagine on IP, if instead of donating to archive.org, you just seed a bunch of content for them. There'd be some reasons why that would be bad, but it would also save a bunch of storage and compute space for them. And it would be the equivalent of donating. And it's why archive.org is interested in IPFS, because they kind of want to become like one copy of all the data, and they'll try to keep as much of a copy as they can. But then they're hoping like other people have other copies of the data and they just call IPFS hashes. And then a lot of times when they call those IPFS hashes, when you go to archive.org to look at a piece of content, they're hoping they can get it from somebody else instead of from themselves, and that'll save them a ton of money. That's kind of why they're interested in it.
Yeah, because I'm in Benton's camp because I don't really care. Not all culture is interesting to me, but I am interested in preserving culture. So I don't care where my money went if I was going to make those kinds of donations. So that's why, because what's popular is not necessarily anything that should be preserved. Right.
I'm going to seed all the dick pics on the internet on archive.org. So every dick pic is permanently available for download. That's my culture.
Lord.
What's our
All right,
cutoff
but maybe
time?
not
It's
you.
almost 10, right?
Yeah, it's almost 10.
Did we really give a good enough set of caveats for the kind of more general public user? Because I'm
I don't
pro
think so.
conceptual and I am actually con. We already made it clear to everyone, right? It is not a way to have a decentralized storage of files, right? You actually have to be serving it up to the IPFS network. I think it's also important to make it clear that it's not, that it is its own network and that it needs to be served to, to the web, right? Is that important to talk about?
So what's the server? Who's the server? Who's the middleman? What's that?
Well, it likewise, you choose, just like you choose to have a node that is a node on the network, you can also choose to have a gateway to serve from the IPFS network out to HTTP, right?
Yeah.
So
Rare Art Labs serves a bunch of files, but we also run a gateway which will serve any file to anybody if they call our URL, and that's available on the network. It's more confusing. That's like I said at the beginning. I was like, when I was going into this, I was like, no, it's super fucking simple. It's just hashes, and you ask for the file, and you get the stuff. That's what it is. And like, it's so easy, and it's just a BitTorrent implementation. But then when you get into it, it's like, well,
no, it's deep.
There's these gateways, and they're all kind of the same, but they're a little different, and they're URLs that are
so
served
how
over
much of
HTTP.
it? So how much of it is hype?
A lot. A lot of it's hype. Yeah.
Because I serve files on Rare Pepe Wallet with HTTP, and I've never had an issue.
That's only because you're an HTTP racist who just is like biased against other protocols.
I'm
And
an
that is the
HTTP
interesting thing.
maximalist.
Yeah, it's funny because you can't get IPFS data except by calling APIs via HTTP. So there's like actually there's no IPFS native way to get data. I mean, there is, but like that's not how people actually use it. So it's a lot hype. I think hype is good. I mean, that is my point of view. Is like there's two things that hype has created about IPFS. One is a really easy to use BitTorrent implementation with some features that we like, some features that don't matter, but some features that we like. And the second is a community of people who kind of imagine what a BitTorrent implementation could be and what it could mean for them and their communities.
Well,
and you would have said BitTorrent to them, and they would have said, "I don't fucking know what that is." And then maybe now they.
Well, I think you're forgetting number 3. It also helped raise $150 million ICO.
We should have talked about that earlier. Do you want to give an overview on that, Joe?
Yeah, so that's actually what turned me off to IPFS. I kind of liked the idea. It's been around for. I remember hearing an interview with is it John Bonet or on Let's Talk Bitcoin in like 2014. talking about IPFS. And it's interesting. I think it's interesting. There's a lot of projects that are trying to do something like that. MaidSafe, Storj, Siacoin. There's a whole plethora of projects that are trying to do the same thing.
Why is Filecoin associated with IPFS?
Because IPFS, the creator of IPFS, has a company called Protocol Labs, and he and his company, and I'm sure his VC funding, decided that they needed a mechanism to help incentivize people to run IPFS nodes and serve files.
So like storage, same thing like how you're incentivized to hold stuff on Storagecoin or something like that.
Literally exactly the same as that.
Cloned it.
So
that's IPFS also?
That's Filecoin, which is by the company, by the guy that created IPFS. Yep.
But it's like Storj and Sia, are they IPFS also?
Nope, they're their own thing.
One of them is no. One of them is IPFS. I think like Storj is IPFS and Sia isn't. One of them still is IPFS.
Yeah,
it's like the storage and addressing is on IPFS. They're not the same company, but they're both. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, so I think the only reason people in Ethereum are interested in IPFS is because IPFS is an Ethereum project. They ran an Ethereum ICO and they do a lot of marketing at Ethereum events. But I would wager a guess that nobody did the research that Tommy did when deciding whether to use IPFS. They just said, oh, everyone else is using it in Ethereum, so we should probably use it too, which maybe is not a bad idea if you want to create a network effect, but it's completely missing the whole point of decentralized file exchange. I mean, if you really cared, if people really cared to send files, they would do it multiple ways. They would do it in IPFS, they'd do it with BitTorrent, they'd do it ZeroNet. And I mean, there's a whole bunch of ways, but they picked IPFS, and there's a reason for that. At the end of the day, in my opinion, you don't need any of it. It's we went through this in.
Just to be clear, what is the reason for it?
Hype, profits.
But how do they profit?
They raised $150 million ICO.
So you need Filecoin to use IPFS?
No, and I think it's important to be clear. You can theoretically at some point in the future, but not now. Just to be very clear, not now. At some point in the future, you can theoretically pay Filecoin to the network, and then people will serve your files for you, and you don't need to worry about it. That's the theory.
Sorry, guys. It's $200 million ICO. Sorry.
Yeah, don't shortchange them. Come on. How rude.
That's more than the Modigliani painting that set a record.
Yeah. I don't have $200 million, to be fair, so I am defending IPFS without $200 million. But
is Filecoin tradable anywhere?
Futures only.
Yeah.
So no.
Yeah, their ICO never it remained for accredited investors the whole time, right?
Yeah, you can only trade futures. You can bet on it, but you can't buy it.
So
why wouldn't people use Amazon storage or something like that? Because it's not decentralized.
It if you're unpopular and Amazon wants to take you down, they can take you down, right?
So now is Amazon probably going to take down the wallet too? That your tokens in. So here's kind of my point: is if we're worried about stuff being taken down, if I'm going to share my image, then I'm also going to need a way to move my token. So why aren't we worrying about that? I mean, everybody uses MetaMask in Ethereum. So what happens if MetaMask gets taken down? Seems like a centralized point to me.
Did it get taken out of the Chrome store recently or something?
It did. There was an issue with that. There was some fakes that got put up, and
there's definitely phishing through there, but
it's an issue. I think a lot of people in the Ethereum space don't do their homework. They see what other people have done, and they say, "Oh, I'll do that too," because that's what everybody's doing. And that's probably not a great way to do some of this stuff.
No, it's very dangerous in all this space.
Script kiddie culture is still pervasive after all these years.
So I can tell a story about early Rare Pepe days where there was a big push to kind of make the Pepe images immutable. And everybody, we weren't even talking about storage at that point. It was putting a hash of your image in the description for the Pepe token. So all that means is Counterparty provides a kind of a memo field for the token issuer to put a little bit of data associated with the token that's stored on chain.
How much data
push
can you
every?
put up there?
I'm not sure. I think descriptions. I'm not sure, but you can put a hash. There's enough room for a hash. I looked at it and I said, "Well, you can see the image on Rare Pepe Wallet. What does it matter? Why do you care? What do we care about the hash for?" The person who issued it knows what the Pepe looks like. It's a non-issue. So we got a lot of pushback. So I decided to create something I called Pepe Chain, and all it was a GitHub repository where it created a Merkle root of every Pepe that existed. It took hashes of the images and the asset, created a Merkle root of up to that Pepe in the chain. So basically, if you had the whole list, you could verify that it was real. That was enough to stop people nagging, and we moved on. One thing that I decided to do recently is kind of close the loop on that. And I asked Mike to broadcast from the original Rare Pepe issuance address for the first Rare Pepe, the Merkle root of all the image hashes and all the asset hashes. So basically what that does is it allows you to download the entire Rare Pepe library and then verify that it's real. And I did that with 2 hashes, and that's it.
Nice.
For 1,774 Pepes. So, but the point.
Back up. For how
So
much?
the point I'm trying to make is I think a lot of people are arguing for immutability and not data persistence. And so we're decentralizing a thing that doesn't really need to be decentralized by providing persistence to these images when nobody's trying to censor them. So if you really want to censor an image, you can just send someone the image. You can go on Telegram and ship it over to them. Like it's not a problem. It's just not a problem. To me, I see all these projects using IPFS because every other project has used IPFS, and so they say, well, now we can just say, oh, our images are decentralized too, where nobody even knows what that means.
I just to push back, I really do believe in developer ecosystems. And I really do believe there will be a time where we will coalesce around a set of standards for how you post metadata and how you post image data, and that we will have ecosystems that do pull down and store all of that data because they really do want it to persist and they want to swarm, serve, seed it. If Rare Digital Art is what I think it could be, and we really do have a focused on decentralization ecosystem of lots of different Rare Digital Art players, I do believe that there will be a really strong need for a really strong benefit to having a way that people achieve hashes that everyone can understand, that reference files everyone knows what they are. And I think that will be a more powerful thing. And I do believe that the most bullish future on Rare Digital Art is that 30 years from now, there will be various cycles where people have forgotten, remembered and forgotten various projects and various art. And that 30 years from now, somebody rediscovers something and it hits a cultural moment and somehow it's still around, not just around in the sense of kind of around, but literally around the way that it was 30 years ago. And that piece becomes worth tens of millions of dollars, or that collection becomes worth tens of millions of dollars. If Rare Digital Art is going to become a thing like that, I think somebody's going to need to, within the next couple of years, go, make more permanent the Pepes, for example, and somebody will certainly do that because they're super popular, and there's all sorts of ways of doing that, like you've already described. And the CryptoPunks have already done this in their own specific standard, which I think is why I'm bullish on CryptoPunks. CryptoKitties have not, which is why I don't buy CryptoKitties and don't wipe my ass with them. You know, like, I really do believe, like, if you want to buy this rare digital art stuff, you need to kind of be thinking, like, how can this somehow survive not nuclear catastrophe, but almost everything else? And yeah, it's probably true that most likely outcome is that doesn't happen at all, and we all forget about this in 5 years. But if it's going to be something where I want to own and hold my most prized rare digital art assets, I want to own rare digital art assets that I think have a shot to stand a lot of tests of time that we're not actually going through right now. And those projects right now, I believe, are RareArt.io, Rare Pepe, and CryptoPunks. And that's about it at the moment. So that's kind of how I look at it.
What?
Yeah,
What is? Take it back real quick. Why is it called Interplanetary File Transportation Service?
Joe knows the answer to that.
Hype.
Don't you have a slide for that, Joe?
Like, why the fuck are they naming it? Why are they naming it a Star Wars name?
It's a great name. I love the name.
So what does it mean?
Kind of hype I like. Well, basically saying that, put a node on the moon, and well, that's not.
But is that literal? If I go to
whatever,
Mars, if I go to Mars, I'll still own my Rare Pepe there.
Aren't we all going to Mars? I'm waiting. I want to go have it terraformed and go to Mars. I mean, look, the point meaning that it's universal. It's trying to call attention to the fact that it's a universal content address, wherever it is. But look, I'll just say, Joe.
How do you know that? I'm stupid.
It's also theoretically scalable to an interplanetary level.
Yeah.
That's but the name also starts with the letters IP, and it's replacing the IP in some ways. I've seen a joke made in the chat room on Telegram. Hey, how about intergalactic file system? Well, that exists file host, and you can actually have nodes, and it's on ZeroNet. Very similar name, but it's actually files instead of just a naming. But anyways, I think I don't know exact terms that they use, but theoretically, they're supposed to be able to have the resolve with little latency over long distances. And so it's a slight exaggeration. And when questioned, it's kind of embarrassing. But I think it's a good objective. I think that kind of level of scalability is better than Moon.
Is anybody watching the chat on YouTube about what people are asking?
Oh, I thought our chat was. Oh, that's only between us. Oh no.
Yeah, there's a YouTube.
Sorry.
Oh shit! People have been saying shit.
There's a YouTube chat, and they want to know, what does addressable namespacing mean?
It just basically means that there's a string. I'm using tech. Okay, there's a series of characters.
It's just a link.
It's a link, and it references the actual file, as opposed to, like, typically your links will have names like Tommy's face.png. It's supposed to reference Tommy's face, but only if my computer actually has a file called Tommy's face.png that's a picture of my face. Content addressable just means that the hash actually means the content. It can never change content.
Okay.
Go back to the other end of the address bar. We've got FTP, HTTP, HTTPS, whatever. These different protocols that are on the other end of the colon that breaks the availability to port the internet so interchangeably with operating systems. That was removed on purpose for IPFS. And fuck. I forgot what you're talking about.
Dan would like to know what IPFS's preferred gender.
It has the FTP. It has the protocol built into the link itself, and so the string of characters is the beginning, in, middle, and end. It's the path, it's the file type, and it's the protocol in which to fetch it. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, there you go.
Arm, leg, arm, head.
So I think everyone watching this should go out and buy Filecoin.
It's insane. Like you should look at the Filecoin futures. At one point had a market cap about like about the same as Ethereum.
Well, that's
It
because
was-
you guys keep putting it in your projects. Everybody sees IPFS. They got to buy that Filecoin.
Me guys? I thought
You
this
and-
idea
You
was
and your Ethereum
How
people.
does Filecoin give you IPFS? I don't understand still. Like, why would you need Filecoin?
it's basically just a token that you can pay people, and theoretically the way it'll work is if you pay it to them, there's a market price on the chain for storage, and if you hit that market price, it'll guarantee you storage of a file, and you don't have to store it yourself. And it'll also it will not guarantee, but it will make quite likely deliverability of that file. So basically, instead of me serving a file of a Pepe, I can pay some Filecoin, and then some random people I don't know might store it for you probably.
It's kind of like how
We also have not mentioned Florin Coin, and Florin Coin also uses IPFS
That's the one.
to tie together the files with their streamable player, and it's
They just got
also
delisted off of Poloniex too.
Oh, they did.
yeah. So Filecoin's a lot like how you pay like dollar coin to Amazon to host your file.
I've heard of that dollar coin.
Yeah, and then sometimes it goes down, but usually it's up. It's pretty reliable.
Yeah, it's not super volatile, so
Yeah.
you can hold your dollar coins all over the place. I mean, there's actually like buildings in your town probably that'll hold your dollar coins for you.
I live in Brooklyn. There's no dollar
Somebody
coin.
can take your dollar coins though, man.
Yeah, they don't have dollar coin machines in Brooklyn.
They keep printing those dollar coins. They're like Ripple.
Oh, no, they're kind of like Ethereum. Just keep printing them.
Mm.
So, back to the like, why? What's the point? What's the purpose of this? I mean, one thing I'd say, Joe, is I love your Merkle tree of the the 1,000, a lot of Pepes. I'm sorry, I forget what the count is. But like for someone like me who's not a developer, right? Like I am working with friends just to build this concept called Collectors Club, where it's basically just a way where we can just agree to preserve each other's content. Yes, we can just simply do it just like by everybody backing up a hard drive, right, that everybody else has. But this is a convenient way. And to Tommy's point, it's kind of building towards a possible standard that we can all use, an ecosystem that from the ground up seems to be. I mean, I've been interested in IPFS for digital art for a long time, but my main problem with it is frankly that it's unwieldy to use for moving image art. I was testing it in whenever that was, whenever Eric Drazen and I started Moving Pictures Gallery, 2016 sometime. And the problem at that point was that larger files were just completely unwieldy there. Maybe, are you saying, Tommy, that it's better now for
Let's
larger
test it
files?
out. I've tested out some 100 gig files and they've worked great, but they might
100
still
gig?
have some.
100 gig?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I was hitting a ceiling at 100 meg in 2016.
Oh yeah, try it out.
That wasn't good enough. That's basically why I abandoned looking at IPFS. Is for my needs, I make very, very large files, like sometimes hundreds of gigabytes, and so it just seemed like it was a non-starter at that time. But I have that's
give it a
great to hear,
shot.
Tommy. That's really fantastic.
Yeah, give it a shot. I'm not promising you anything, but I've just tested it with that and it's worked fine because we have some moving image artists that we were working with and we wanted to see what would happen, and it's slow because it's a moving image, but it's not slower than loading it yourself. It's not slower than loading it just off a server. It's pretty similar. And then if you have it in multiple places, it loads faster. Yeah, we put it in a few different places to see what would happen.
Yeah, I was basically crashing it in whenever that was, fall 2016 was when I was testing that, and it was just simply a non-starter at that point.
I got a question for y'all. It's gonna be a simple yes or no question. Will blockchain and digital art pieces be a thing in 10 years? Benton.
It'll be the thing. Are you kidding? All other art will be obsolete.
Cynthia.
Yes. It will be
Sure.
a thing.
So are we saying
Blockchain and rare digital art. Is it a thing in 10 years?
Like period. Like, can you access one piece of rare digital art on a
Is it
blockchain?
just a thing? Is it a thing, or is it just not a thing?
Normies know about it.
sure?
Yeah, is
It's
it
a thing. I'll still have my Pepe's.
Duncan?
Yeah, of
Thing
course.
or not a thing?
I think it might not even be by that name. It might even be so integrated and so intuitive to the next generation. That they're like, yeah, I'm gonna go home and TCP/IP tonight when I get off of work.
Tommy, a thing. Tommy, you're banking on it being a thing. So you
Yeah,
have to
no,
say it.
I feel like it'll be a thing. Might be a niche thing, but it'll be a thing.
Oh, so the
Well,
whole panel.
maybe blockchain. Maybe
The banks
blockchain will
shouldn't
be
be the only ones that can
digital art will not be a thing.
I think
Hey, getting loud over there. I can't hear you. Yo, Duncan's. Yeah, thanks. All right, Ben, what were you saying, Ben?
Only that I think that blockchains may not be a particularly big thing in 10 years, but digital art will be. I mean, that's that will be art. Art. It is art. We won't even call it digital art. It's just art.
Are we going to be using IPFS to store our digital art?
No, you cannot store anything on IPFS.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
I learned
But
that
as
today,
the ecosystem, I don't know. I'm going to look into WebTorrent and see if I'm going to change my mind about it.
I predict
I think
yes.
people are going to find hardware. Is this the same thing with music? I think there's going to be a hardware influx of ways to view the art, and I think Mural is going to get some decent competition with that. And because it's not fun just to keep it in the ether. People want to be
Yeah.
able to look at it and in many different ways. So that's my prediction, is that the hardware market is going to boom for this digital art. That's what I think.
I'm with you.
All right.
Joe,
What's
IPFS, no. So you might
I
be
won't be
against it,
using
but
it.
do you think it's good? What's your prediction? Is it going to be the way people serve rare digital art primarily in 10 years?
I think it depends on what Ethereum's doing because
I know, you gotta
I only see Ethereum projects using IPFS.
So you predict no?
You'll still be using it, right? Like,
So you don't think Ethereum is dead in 10 years, I guess.
I think there will be something that we will call Ethereum, but it may not be what we see as Ethereum today.
Yeah.
It'll just be an EOS sidechain. So
As soon as they go proof of stake, it's going to be a fork. Guarantee it.
It'll definitely fork if they try to do proof of stake. But
Well,
that
it's
might
been on
be
the
okay.
roadmap the whole time.
Yeah, but
Let's
it'll
make
fork.
this.
It'll
Let's make this.
fork. Somebody's
Let's make
gonna
this a
keep it.
prediction show.
I think the fact of the matter is that
How many-
IPFS is replacing the current structure, and it's unavoidable. It's not
replacing
whether or
anything.
not you think it's going to happen; it's happening. That's my opinion.
Damn. Bold opinions. Well, before we get out of here, do we need to mention anything else about IPFS right now?
Any new
Anybody
releases?
Maybe I could drop some links in the video. Check out awesome.ipfs.io and js.ipfs.io. All JavaScript version, and I can't remember what awesome is, but I'm assuring you it's pretty cool. It's in the name.
All right. Hey, Joe, is anybody
I'll
using
put it in the
IPFS
comments
for
too.
Bitcoin?
YouTube.
I don't know of anybody besides Ethereum projects that are using IPFS.
Yeah, we should check that out. We should see if there is. There really might not be.
Yeah,
We should try to figure that out.
That could be a good point. No, I haven't heard that.
In the crypto community, you're saying there, because it was used.
Right.
It has non-crypto use, but in the crypto community, I think you might be right.
Huh.
Yeah, I wonder
find
why.
out.
We've left a open-ended question for our viewers there to go search with their magnifying glass of why IPFS is being used only on Ethereum.
I think it'd be
Is-
interesting to search and see if any other forms of decentralized file storage are being used with Ethereum. Because isn't storage have an Ethereum token now?
Yeah.
They switched from counterparty to
So their
Ethereum.
marketing game just is not as good as IPFS.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
They got a
Doesn't
lot
have
of money.
interplanetary.
Well, I think
They
they
got-
only raised 50 million. So they're, I mean, IPFS, they got them beat 4-1. So
That's some horse shit. 50 million. Boo.
that was their second
Right.
ICO.
I know, that's so fucking stupid. Anyway, I think I'm glad we did this, guys. This was really fun, and I think we need to do more editions of various people argue, but mostly agree with Joe Looney.
I think I've convinced all of you that you don't need IPFS. So my work is done.
I knew we didn't need IPFS. We knew we didn't need it, but we just really want it because we all own Filecoin.
The winner. Tyson O'Ham says the winner is the friends we made along the way.
That's right.
The winner is when it goes to the moon.
Yeah.
I don't really know crypto memes that well, so I'm probably fucking this up.
This is the only crypto meme you need to know.
I do think Joe. I actually agree with Sasha. I do
Who's that
think
son
Joe
of-
won because we all were supposed to disagree with him, but then we all agreed with him. So it does feel like he won.
Check out WebTorrent. I think you'll be surprised at how much better it is for this application than IPFS.
Oh,
I'm building
definitely.
an IPFS web torrent.
Definitely want to check it out. But again, like, you know, at least it's something that I, being a complete idiot about this stuff, can use. So like I
You'll be
can't
able to
use
use
your
WebTorrent.
Pepe Merkle tree, right? Unless the scientists approve non-Pepe art, because I don't make Pepe, you know, but I can use IPFS with other
You can
artists
use
and
web
so-
torrent. Web torrent's even easier to use.
I'm gonna
check it out.
check it out. I just simply wasn't, you know, familiar with
Ben,
it.
Yeah,
if you
and
start,
because
Ben, if you
WebTorrent-
start drawing Pepes, you're going to become 10 times wealthier by next year. That's
But
just
they
how
don't.
Keck-
They're not
that's the
accepting
magic of
submissions.
Keck.
If
They're
my
not
goal
accepting
is,
submissions.
if
You
I,
can put 'em on
exactly,
Rare
it's all
Labs.
over. The scientists, they all killed themselves or something. That's what I heard.
Yeah, we don't know what happened.
But you know, look, if
All the scientists are dead.
they went interplanetary.
You guys want to do quick closing words for each person, really quick?
All right. Ben.
My closing words is Joe won, so I'll let everyone else close out.
All right. Duncan.
I wanted to jump topic, but stay on topic. At Decentral Web, I'm going to be in the basement tomorrow and give on how and why to submit crypto art. So that kind of applies to all of us. I'm going to try to highlight everyone's project and the mechanisms behind submitting art. And so please wish me
Where
luck.
do they
And
find
if you're
that at?
there, definitely check it out.
Where do they find that at?
Decentralweb.net. I'll link it in the comments.
Put a link in the comments. All right.
Yeah.
Joe,
Thank you.
Seems that people are crowning you. How do you feel about your battle today?
I feel good. I'm ready for the next one.
Got to give him a challenge next time.
Yeah,
No,
too easy.
I think if anybody learned anything, it's don't just follow everybody off the cliff.
Wow. I still think that's a good idea. There's tokens down that cliff.
Are you calling Ethereum a cliff?
Oh,
There's a lot of
jeez.
cliffs when it comes to Ethereum.
Joe Looney says Ethereum is a cliff everyone's jumping off. Tweet it.
Ben, closing words from you.
If anybody has extremely unpopular art that they want to preserve and make a consortium with me or just whatever, like explore ways to preserve unpopular cultures, get in touch. You can find me everywhere, Benton C. Bainbridge. I like unpopular art.
So you should
All
like
right.
Pepes then.
I was thinking of
Oh,
the same thing.
they're too popular for me.
Oh, like more unpopular.
we gotta get
There's some pretty unpopular Pepes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I might like the really unpopular ones.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of unpopular ones.
Okay, maybe that's ones that I should buy. Are they still
You
available?
wouldn't like DJ Pepe. He's
Yeah.
very popular.
You
No,
gotta go.
I like DJ the concept of DJ Pepe a lot. The DJ Pepe card quite a bit.
Here's the thing about DJ Pepe. DJ Pepe is the only meme to ever perform live at the first annual Rare Digital Art Conference, and that will never ever change.
Change. That's
That will
immutable.
always be.
That's immutable.
That
I
is
can't fork that shit.
As we say on our Telegram group, first ever.
Hold on, really quick. My actual closing words is John has finished a big getting the RareArt.io live. You know, I have a full-time job, but there's a RareArt.io full-time team, and John's going to shift his focus to working with me and Joe, if Joe's God willing, to actually plan Rare.af version 2, hopefully in September, maybe in October, very much dependent on Joe's schedule and our schedules, but that is coming. So I just wanted to make sure I let everyone know to stay on me about that, because we will get that planned, we'll get that scheduled. But if you have content you're thinking about wanting to present at that, either on panel or, but more likely we want to do more sort of non-panel content, actually people looking at each other's projects and shit, be thinking about that, and feel free to hit me up on Telegram with ideas, because we are going to do that. And I've been saying this, but like, we're actually going to schedule it, and it's and now that John's on top of it, it'll actually get done. So looking forward to that.
In New York, right?
We're going to try to do New York, but it's still up for debate, but I think New York makes the most sense, and it wasn't a huge issue for people to get to.
Okay, great.
All right, so we're gonna be out, and thanks for tuning in. And everybody, be on the hunt to find an Ethereum project that doesn't use IPFS,
Or
and a blockchain that does use IPFS other than Ethereum. Correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, fun. Thanks, guys. Appreciate y'all's time.
Deuces.
Take it easy.
Peace.
Decentralized.